Strategy without execution is just a dream, but execution without strategy, that's a nightmare. When it comes to AI, what's your strategy for making sure your IT infrastructure doesn't lend itself to an AI nightmare? On today's show, we have a pair of data center and high-performance architecture experts, Jeff Fonke and Matt Halcomb, who dive into what AI-ready infrastructure means, from modernizing legacy data centers, adopting more composable and flexible architectures, and considering factors like power, cooling, security, and workflow integration. Jeff and Matt advocate for a dynamic, flexible, and informed approach that can ultimately shapeshift in the future to meet the needs of your AI ambitions. Because if we know one thing, it's that the rapid pace of innovation in AI hardware, software, and workflows will only intensify, meaning your AI infrastructure strategy needs to be purposeful and well thought out. This is the AI Proving Ground podcast from Worldwide Technology, everything AI, all in one place. I'm your host, Brian Felt, and today's show is a great listen for those trying to figure out what they need to make their AI dreams come true. Let's get to it.
What we're trying to get people to understand, the same thing's happening with AI. The problem is it's more complex than their largest environment, like an ERP system they would have built before.
Yeah.
It's that and then some, right? And they need to understand all about that. And this is where we come into play with helping them have the options necessary. How do we make sure they can be successful in their journey while leveraging the technology they're comfortable with, without throwing their knowledge they've gained so far out the door. So if they're a Cisco organization, and we can say that because we want Cisco to hear it, then we want them to understand that Cisco is a supported networking solution and an AI center of excellence. You just have to understand what Cisco products are the best of breed for that kind of situation. If you're a Dell or HPE compute person, then it's okay to continue down that path, that it's then adding the different components of accelerators. And again, if you like a certain storage vendor, most likely those storage vendors are going to have those same storage arrays that will handle your AI workflows. You just may have to change the model, but you can still be working with the same group, the same organizations, leveraging the same skill set you have. It's just with different infrastructure. Yeah, and it's the same but different kind of thing.
The complexities of these workloads are far different than anything we've ever dealt with, and that's one thing you have to, like, when you look at, we're not going out and looking at ripping everything out and doing a greenfield install. To Matt's point, you have to think about, all right, what do they have today, and what fits for a model? Can we do this brownfield, right, with the gear that you may already have and make some adjustments, or do you have to really go in and rip out? There's pieces of it that just won't work, right, and so making that correlation and ultimately going through the process of evaluating those architecture. Again, if you're a big NetApp shop or you're a big Dell shop, we know they have solutions that can work at scale for certain storage to feed the accelerator. That we actually really where we focus a lot of our time is at the accelerator. So.
Matt, I think you guys were getting at this, but Matt, baseline for us a little bit. Why can't our clients run AI workloads just on traditional?
The requirements, right? Let's think about it this way. We're in the generation now kind of concept. That's why I call my kids generation now kids, because everything they want happens now, right? And the workflows we're doing are requiring more compute than ever. They're needing access to not just data, but the right data, and it's different subsets of data, right? And then take, for instance, back in the day, an ERP report from your database server. You run a Tableau report to get a certain amount of sales out of a certain region, right? Now, the questions are going to be asked. I want to know what is the sales in these regions and what type of sales are coming out of it. And people have learned that with the technology of AI and the search mechanisms that are being baked into these models, that they can get their answers and then 10 times the amount of answers they ever thought. But that requires an exponential amount of compute and understanding of how the technology gets put together to allow the proper access into the proper data sets to be giving back all that information in a now type of fashion, not a wait a minute and I'm going to show you a spinning wheel while I go search out just a small subset of a database environment. Now I'm looking at pre-trained things. I'm looking to drive more and get more detailed answers than I ever have in the past, right? And that's the key thing, is that everybody has all this data, but it's been so hard. I would need 3 or 4 different reports to gather what we can do today in a single AI instance kind of answer back.
Yeah, what you talk about, Matt, there is, it reminds me of an agentic approach that we're all looking at now today. I mean, so when you talk about getting it to you now, if you think about having an API that can call on another API, think about the acceleration that's needed to be able to pass that back and forth without even having human intervention there. That is a whole nother level, and I know we haven't even really delved into that yet, but I think, traditional retrieval augmented generation, which is a very popular topic here at WWT, but like over the last year, we've seen that just completely evolve, and bringing the data into the use case, for the use case specifically, all of that stuff needs to be thought about before you can even think about designing an infrastructure, right? So if you don't know what that use case is, and how much of scale that said client may need when they're actually when we're architecting these things, you can't begin to even design anything, right, from an acceleration perspective. So there's a lot of things that have to be thought through.
You can design things that just may not be the right thing at the end of the day, and that's a key component. And I think where Jeff and our teams help customers even understand is the journey. If we want to dive in, let's hone in. Let's focus on one area of AI called generative AI. Let's start there. And the excitement that happened towards the end of 2022 into 2023, right? ChatGPT took off. People started having fun. Everybody wanted to build their own generative AI. Worldwide was right smack dab in the middle of that, right? And let's talk around how we started out our journey at Worldwide and how transformative generative AI has gone. Like you heard just Jeff talk around where we're at today with agentic generative AI, right? And we've gone down a path with grabbing 400 billion parameter models and the largest amount of data sets we have, and training a model on our own into getting pre-trained models that are considerably less. And then we got into pre-trained models with specific data, which we got into retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, utilizing a vector database with very specific data. And now we're talking agentic RAG. We're even talking retrieval augmented generation with graph database and vector database, depending on the questions you're asking and then what type of data you have in there. So it's been very transformative, and trying to guess how to put if you went out and bought infrastructure without understanding how things have progressed, you might have overbought on accident. And the transformation that's happened in the industry today, that there's things that are changing when you look and see what our partners are doing, the key players in there. Technology isn't sitting there for 4 or 5 years. It's 12, 18 months, and the next generation product is out. So to me, the key component is building a scalable environment. I said something funny early on in this, what we're going to build in our proving ground. And I asked people, like, do you know what a mainframe is? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, what we're going to do is build a frame main. It's like a mainframe, but it's different. And it enables an organization to take a look at the technology that's out there today, and then kind of put together an idea around what is right for them. That's what we have a lot of our customers. They want to build right for them. And that's what Jeff was touching on, around understanding your use cases and being able to build a very dynamic solution that enables you to scale in whatever direction you need to based upon your use cases. Because we're starting to see as people start to get some success in this area, they go from 10 use cases to 100 use cases really quickly.
Do you build those use cases off the infrastructure at some point? Like, you got your use cases in line. You build your purpose-built infrastructure there, and you're off to the races. Well, then what happens? Are you building then your next set of use cases off of that infrastructure? Or
well, you could, but usually it's like the what-if statements happen, right? This happens all the time in the ATC with POCs. Customers come in and they quickly understand how quickly we can help them get from idea to outcome. And then as we got done that quickly, they're like, well, what about this? And what about that? And I think organizations are starting to gain some level of success with their AI initiatives. And they're like, well, if it did that, what about if we applied it here? And what if we applied it there? And we don't know right off the bat what level of technology under the covers will be needed from both a training, tuning, and inferencing standpoint. So if you're building a rigid system like a mainframe, you're kind of stuck on how you scale it. But if you build the frame main type approach, then it enables you to scale in whichever direction is necessary to help adjust it to your workflows that you're going to be asking of it.
Yeah, so Jeff, knowing that there's a little bit of level of uncertainty there, what types of considerations do have to be put in place to get to, Matt, what you're talking about, that frame main?
Yeah, I mean, when we're talking with some of the largest clients in the world, it's really talking about like the why with the ROI, because the budget won't be there if the folks making decisions with the budget, right, can't see an ROI. And that's where I think Worldwide's in a unique position, because we've done a lot of these things already at the line of business, where we've built a center of excellence and we've gone through the process of building some of these architectures ourselves. We've got live production applications, and getting from a high value proof of value and then a proof of concept and bringing reality. That's why we built the proving ground, really, to get these architecture examples set up. And that experience that we have with our own internal data science folks, our own internal teams that have now operationalized these things. I mean, knowing that to take something from a high level proof of concept to a valuable production application, there's things that you have to consider, like a feedback loop in a generative AI scenario. Is this useful content you're getting, or is it not useful? If you're not doing that feedback loop, you're probably not going to ever get to a large scale production. Well, that's important when you're designing an infrastructure that needs to be able to be, to Matt's point, a frame main, as you say, to be able to scale, because you got 1,000 users a day doing something. That's and for those that have been following generative AI, there's chunking and embeddings, scale with users. There's all kinds of things that go into sizing infrastructures. We've done a really good job. The team and others have used the AI proving ground to build tools to really tell customers how to size these things properly. How many accelerators do you need? What type of storage do you need? But without the details that I just kind of rattled off at the top of my head, it's very hard to do. So, like in drinking our own champagne, we've done a lot of that work, and it really is becoming super valuable as we help navigate those conversations for our customers. So.
Yeah, and when did it become champagne instead of Kool-Aid?
Yeah, Kool-Aid. I don't know. Like it's late in the day today, so I think we could all use. I don't know. It's the year has started fast, right? Right out of the gate here in 2025. So it's exciting.
Well, Matt, we hear about, companies big and small investing billions of dollars in quote unquote AI-ready infrastructure. They want to get to AI-ready infrastructure. Lay out for me a little bit in layman's terms, and we can get into more technical details, but, what exactly does that mean from end to end?
It depends on whether a partner's gotten to the customer or the customer's done its own homework. So there are a number of we'll call them turnkey solutions. There are also a number of reference architectures that are different organizations will put out there, right? We have some that will stick with a specific partner. You've heard the term SuperPod, right? And that's a very specific solution from our wonderful partners at NVIDIA. Now, that solution might be right for the right customer. That may not be right for all customers, right? So we try to look at them and we try to have a conversation around what is it that you're looking to do? What are your favorite partners in different areas? Let them understand what their options are so that they don't kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to say, when they have invested all this time and effort into training their engineers within a certain technology that they know how to use every single day. We try to help them understand how they can begin migrating, or it's almost like a data center modernization component. We've been talking around data center modernization forever. AI is just accelerating that, right? It's the catalyst to getting them to understand that they have to do something. It's now opened their eyes around something called facilities, because you're not going to put this next generation of compute and storage and networking in your data center that you haven't touched in over 20 years. You're going to have to begin adopting a more hybrid approach because of how people are going to interact with the solutions that you're building out there and what's available and where do you want to run it, because it's a difficult math problem that they have to start understanding. And then that leads into the wonderful conversations of process and policies. So there's a large organizations who haven't changed their policies in 20 years, 30 years. And if they want to adopt this with their AI initiatives, they're going to have to take a look at more than just a purchase order. They're going to have to look at how they're building out their solutions, how they're developing their use cases, how they're protecting. You heard Jeff talk around there's different ways in which you're trying to get the right outcome, but you also have to bring security components into place that you don't have, and you have to put those frameworks around there, because as you guys know, there's going to be the bad guys are out there, right? And they're out. The one thing they're after is data, and you have to protect that data, and you have to protect that. Our customers still need to understand that AI is still AI, right? We heard Tim Brooks say before, today's AI is the worst AI you're going to see because it just gets better every single day. But there's also challenges that go into that with you have individuals that are trying to do different, I don't know, bad things, we'll just say, into your generative AI. And customers have to understand that they have to check their sources as well, because there's a lot of technology that the generative AI is a very subservient type of solution. And it's going to give you an answer, right, wrong, or indifferent. It doesn't have the ability to understand whether it's giving you a completely silly answer or the answer is spot on. And if our end users have to be even educated, and that's when we talk around educating the end user, we talk around people as being a key component of their AI initiative, and it's training and enabling the engineers and the data scientists and their IT staff, but it's also training their end users to understand when to and when not to trust an answer that they get, and make sure they take a look at the source data that gets given back to what the answer they're getting. So you can understand the complexity that goes into this, is that you have to put these components together in a secure way. You have to be able to make sure that they're the most efficient they are, and that they have the proper facilities even to support them. So it's a more difficult.
Yeah, we were talking, Matt, at the our customer technical advisory board late last year, and the one thing I did notice when I had those conversations, we talked a lot about AI. But there's a lot of fatigue out there right now. Like it is just getting every OEM, every manufacturer, they're coming from every angle to get in the door to try to get into some of this. And as customers, like you mentioned a lot of things, there's purpose-built, turnkey solutions. There's ways to do it in a very dynamic nature where you're taking pieces of things that you've already built that are going to work for potential solutions, and then maybe adding the right accelerator, the right networking components, that kind of thing. But they're getting fatigued just because everybody's pushing to get in the door to be the next accelerator in the window or in their data center or in their hybrid environment. So it's super important that I wanted to emphasize, like, we want to try to strip that away and be the bespoke partner that we can go into the proving ground and just kind of do some of this stuff, and look at the various accelerators out there from all of the different players. Look at the different storage options. Look at the different networking components, right? We're writing blogs and white papers on, the value of InfiniBand versus Ethernet. And, there's some stuff coming from a storage perspective. Do you need a parallel file system? Do you have to have, or does traditional unstructured work? Or, do you need GPU direct storage? How do you connect these things east and west? All of those things, those are things we're doing as an architecture group day in and day out, my team, your team, the rest of the proving ground folks. And so I think, as you look at that fatigue, we want to just be the place to where, maybe just be a light of truth, if you will, as to this is what we've experienced. We are, up to our neck, last 18 months now, we've been building this thing. We were told to go kind of build this thing out, and we're going to invest a lot of our capital into that, and we've done that. And it's about the people, process, the silicon and software. I remember that you talk about that all the time, but it's true. It's about all of those things coming together. So
I do want to get back to the AI proving ground, and certainly the turnkey versus custom. You mentioned, Matt, modernization.
Yep.
We've been talking about that for years. How much of this is a modernization play versus how much of a purpose-built mentality is a complete overhaul?
It needs to be both. Unfortunate, you're not going to run your new. I don't know. You could try to put your AI initiatives on gear and that goes back in the process and policies, right? On gear that's 7 years old. Good luck with that, because you're not going to be very successful. Your facilities is probably going to need an upgrade, and if you want to do a cost analysis of upgrading your existing data center, go ahead. But there are a lot of organizations that we are partnering with that have locations for you that are cloud adjacent, that can provide you the proper power and cooling necessary to get your journey going if it's going to take you, because they don't understand the time and effort to bring an upgraded data center. Maybe they've got a data center that's in an area that even can't even be upgraded from a power standpoint because the grid is already maxed out. That you've already cut short your ability and your AI initiatives to be successful in the conventional way that you did it. So you're going to have to. Technology is changing, like I said, at a rate that I haven't seen in the 30 years I've been in IT. And the technology that's going to become commonplace, AI is in everything, right? You might as well get used to it. If you didn't like it, it doesn't matter. There's not going to be a switch, a storage array, a component, a piece of software that doesn't have an AI kind of component to it. And the infrastructure necessary to support that is going to be, we're definitely not going to have an issue with floor space. Let's just say that. We're going to have plenty of floor space because when Jeff and I worked together 20 years ago back in internal IT, right, we brought in something called an E20K from Sun Microsystems, something the size of a refrigerator, right? It took 4 of us to push it up the ramp in the back of the building. And today that compute runs in about 4 RU. So when you take a look at that, when you take a look at how technology is advanced, right, this is where we're at. And speeds and feeds, we're talking 800 gigabit right now in Ethernet speeds. We're talking just zettabytes of data because data isn't going away. That's your gold. We go back into you just got to have the right data. You got to have the right access to the right data, and that's a security component that comes into play. And like we say, it's going to continue spreading out because the use cases we're going to start to have, even past generative AI, we're seeing a huge push in computer vision, in digital twin, in natural language processing components that the people are starting to like, wow, this could really be useful if I brought that into my environment. An everyday mundane task that used to take weeks to get done, if I do the right things, I can have this done in a day, let alone weeks. So, and it's having the underlying infrastructure to support that and the policy and the process behind it that can support it. So their data center modernization is going to have to happen or they're going to fall behind. And if they haven't already started that, they're already behind the 8 ball because their competitors most likely have already started this journey, tagging it into, and they can't forget about their digital transformation, right? And it's all a part of it. It's how they're coming forward. And again, we get into with that even with some of their initiatives from a carbon footprint. You got to be careful there. You can't take your initiatives from a carbon footprint and throw that out just because you're going to do AI. And that's why we talk around building purpose-built infrastructure so that you're not oversizing things. You're not just wasting power just because some of these solutions come in the door and they can chew on 2 to 3 kW just sitting idle. So you don't want to have infrastructure sitting in your data center that's sitting idle, and you want to be able to scale in an efficient and secure way. So that's what Jeff's team is great about doing is helping sit down with the customer, take a look at the technology stacks that are out there today and understanding what the customer has today. How do we help you scale and build your AI center of excellence in an efficient manner that doesn't take you away from your carbon footprint needs, doesn't slow down your digital transformation, and then helps accelerate your data center modernization into your AI center of excellence.
Yeah. So Jeff, I mean, the aspect of purpose built, does that not, to play devil's advocate a little bit, does that not run the risk of by the time you implement and integrate a purpose built system in with the rapidly evolving technology of AI, is it not going to be out of date then?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's one that, as fast as these new accelerators are coming out, what we try to do is when we're architecting, new solutions, we're looking at ways to be adaptable, to be able to adhere to the changes in the market, but and not paint customers in a corner, right, if they've made a very large investment. And to be honest with you, I mean, just this week, I think alone they announced some stuff at a very large tech conference where they can now fit a 400 billion parameter model, I believe, on a single chip, as like that is unbelievable, and they're starting to make this at a consumer grade to be able to be consumed at the research level, at the student level. So the advancements in technology are not going to slow down, but what we try to do is be very thoughtful and consultative on the front end as we go to build these things out. In the early stages, the biggest of the big customers were like, we just need to go far out that and get AI going, and we're going to buy a bunch of GPUs, and we're going to put that in our environment, and we'll figure out the rest later. That's kind of slowed down, I think, especially in the enterprise. As customers really want to know the ROI for their business, we have to be very mindful about those purpose-built infrastructures. Now, there are turnkey solutions that will do great inference for a customer, really applying and usability of the actual use case. But as we're seeing, like, customers are still just dipping their toe in the water, and they want to know, why should I do a turnkey versus a purpose-built versus a reference design versus a validated design? They hear AI factory, they hear factory compute by XYZ, and it's all very confusing. I mean, what is a validated design versus a, Matt, you mentioned a superpod. These are very rigid, certified architectures, and customers don't know the difference between a base pod, a super pod, and or a cluster of nodes. So like really understanding what invalidates a super pod and what creates a base pod. And I'm using very NVIDIA specific terminology there, but that goes across the board, right? There's whether you're an OEM with NVIDIA or other GPUs in the sheet metal, you just have to think through it when you're being very purpose built. The goal of our team is to prevent customers from going down a road that paints them in a corner and they can't scale. So.
And Brian, the thing that we talk about, our customers they have very heterogeneous environments, right? They don't have a single OEM from top to bottom. Mm-hmm. So they like to have options. They always have a couple compute vendors. They always have a couple storage vendors, right? And when they go that purpose built, you're almost single vendor approach. So now you're talking around doing a data center modernization around a single vendor. Is that really what I got? It took me a while to get away from that. Are you going to go back to that? Mm-hmm. And that's a conversation that we're starting to have right now, that customers don't want to go to that. They want the purpose-built turnkey-like solution, but they want it with the ability to have options. That's where the frame main kind of the thought came into my head. Yeah. That they want mainframe-like, but they want to have the options. They want to have an open. They want to be able to take a look at two different options at a networking and make sure that the both of those can support their solutions as a viable solution that would be supported. The same thing on the compute side of the house. You can throw the same accelerators in a number of different compute vendors and still continue down your path there. The same thing on storage, as Jeff talked about. Sometimes certain workflows require parallel file systems where others don't, and it might behoove you to maybe have multiple types of high performance architecture from the storage standpoint, depending upon what your use cases are.
Yeah, something we didn't talk about yet. I mean, and that's composability, right? I mean, you talk about painting yourself in a corner. Well, a lot of architectures are coming out where they're trying to paint in and build in composability. And what do I mean by that? Well, it's really being able to scale at different components. Like if you look at a storage array, you have to be able to, in certain scenarios, scaling compute, the acceleration piece of that actual storage array from the actual data is key in certain cases. But being able to do it at scale, that's the thing that like you really need to understand the workload before you can really define what that architecture looks like. So, if a customer's already all in with one OEM, they know they have expertise there. Our goal isn't to go in and rip out that OEM and put in something brand shiny new. Sometimes that's needed because you have to modernize that infrastructure. Yeah. But oftentimes they've got a solution that will probably work. But to Matt's point earlier, you just got to think through what the latest controller model is, or what the latest version of Flash that's out there, and how do you integrate maybe some storage class memory into that and be able to do that at scale, because the worst thing you want is your GPUs sitting idle, right? Yep. I was talking about that 5 years ago when I was doing storage workshops. Like to feed the GPU, you have to be able to have a very fat pipe to feed the GPU, and you have to have a very fast storage system that has excellent throughput and I/O and response times to be able to adhere to the workloads to keep the GPUs busy. Yep. We want to make sure the GPUs are busy. Whether we're helping design use cases to run on those GPUs and push the I/O workloads, that's our goal, and then having the components of the infrastructure that are capable of not falling down when called upon to do said performance.
We can we raised the flag of composability a lot, and that requires certainly integration from the vendor standpoint. What are we seeing just kind of real world in terms of how they can interoperate? Well,
the world's changing in a big hurry. You've got a couple vendors out there that are, one of them a good partner of Worldwide. Technology's moving from like blade chassis systems, right? And what we did things a few years ago, into now taking the cabinet and turning the cabinet into basically the blade chassis system, because the requirements around power and cooling alone of your compute. And as Jeff spoke about it, you're going to start seeing technology over the next 12 to 18 months where you're going to start implementing the blade becomes a 1RU or 2RU server, like the pizza box servers we call it, and you're going to slide that in. It's going to automatically connect power and cooling to the components of compute. Eventually, as we're following, and this is where Worldwide also helps with different consortiums and things that are happening in the industry, from a Compute Express Link consortium and the Ultra Accelerator Link consortium and the Ultra Ethernet consortium, the Data Center Modern Systems consortium that are out there that's shaping all of our partners and what they're doing and how the industry's continuing to advance the way that it does things and builds things. It's completely going to be, I don't know, different in 12 to 18 months from now. And if customers aren't aware of what's going on, they could, as Jeff said, they could build themselves and architect themselves into a corner, which they won't be able to adopt the newer technology 12 to 18 months ago. And it's back to another parallel build, which will be incredibly painful for them.
Yeah, I guess maybe that would be a good time to bring up the Center of Excellence. Is that a key role and function of any quality Center of Excellence to make sure that the organization is kind of ready to unplug and plug in as needed?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of hit on it earlier too, and I know, without building a Center of Excellence inside your organization, there's not a really, there's a couple things that have to be considered, right? I mean, like support and buy-in at the board and C-level, understanding those ROIs and why that that matters. There's so many personas we work with. There's like a great Venn diagram that I think we've created, but it's like the data science folks that are doing their thing. There's the infrastructure folks that are required to kind of get these projects off the ground, and then there's the folks, the lines of business that really care about these specific use cases, right? And all of that together, that should be a part of a Center of Excellence when you take all those personas together. And we try to sit in the middle and help with bringing all of that together. And you really need, and that includes security, that includes all of the things, right? At the C level, just driving the demand. You won't get adoption in your business if you're not building a Center of Excellence to really come forth with the ideation and the outcomes, that you want for your organization, and then driving that down into, the IT group now needs to put something together. Are we going to do this in the cloud? Are we going to do it in a colo? Do we have enough power in an existing data center? Are we going to do it in our own data center? And how are we going to do that? What accelerators are going to buy? All of those things come into play. It's a very large ecosystem, and it comes down to, I guess I'll say it again, Matt, people, process, silicon, and software, right? All of these things come together, but I'm going to take royalties out on that, I think, at some point.
Ballpark for me, how many organizations out there have a Center of Excellence, let alone a robust functioning Center of Excellence?
We're seeing it happen more now. If you'd asked me that 6 months ago, I'd say, the numbers a lot less than 50%. But I think now, and we're in a new year. I mean, gosh, it's moved so quick over the last year. I was just on 3 calls today, and they're starting to get a lot more buy-in. And really just, I think, and that's one of the things, and I'm not in our consulting group, but that's one of the things we do so well is like bringing that Center of Excellence together and really showcasing how we've done it ourselves has really been valuable. Because we have a lot of experience in that. So again, 10 years doing data science work, and then ultimately bringing that over the last few years together to build kind of the generative AI projects we've kind of brought to life. So
yeah. No, I want to add it. So when you say Center of Excellence, I want people to understand that Center of Excellence doesn't mean it's a strictly on-prem solution, right?
Yeah,
and what we need to people understand that we've said this before, that their AI initiatives will go from data center to desktop to cloud to edge and everywhere in between. And that's where, one, they have to start taking a look at their process and their policies that are antiquated, start taking a look at their skill sets and understanding what they're doing. A data scientist and a data engineer are very much like our developers were a couple years ago. We understand what happened in the transformation of cloud native applications, right? And the utilization of cloud, and why did it take off? Well, it took off because IT staff weren't ready to support a different way in which developers were writing and deploying their applications. Well, here we are again with a new heavier hitting. Now, a lot of the AI stuff that we do is in a container. And a container, that end user, data scientist, data engineer, they really don't care what the underlying infrastructure is, right? They care about getting to results out of their work. And what we're trying to teach our customers is how do they architect their Center of Excellence that allows them to scale in many directions, along with using technology either in cloud, on-prem, cloud adjacent, whatever, to where the end user themselves, the data scientists, data engineers, the developers are logging into a single portal. And then wherever their work gets done at, it's up to the staff to understand where the most cost-efficient location is and where the best place is to run that. So you're probably going to start seeing a lot of technologies out there that help do intelligent work placement of their different apps, even as these people start building out and securing their center of excellence across all those areas we talked about. And then allowing the data scientists the freedom to do, or the ability to deliver their inferencing solution regardless where the end user's at, to give the most efficient and correct response back into it, that they don't have to be constantly touching, right? This whole thing just has to work. And I think that's what we need to, that's the next stages we're getting into. They're dipping their toes, they're understanding it. Now we have to get them to start, again, changing their process and policies and understanding that this has to be bigger than that they've ever looked at. This is the most complex thing they've looked at, and it's dealing heavily with their data. So the ability to make a mistake, or what we call a resume generating event, happen, it's happening more and more. And if you're not moving the needle in multiple areas of your organization, we have some that have 1,000 use cases but have no infrastructure to run on top of it. We have some that have infrastructure but don't have any use cases. We've seen it both ways, and it needs to be a nice, simple balance, and enabling them to be successful in their initiatives.
Well, Jeff, let's go back to a little bit of some considerations for purpose-built. Certainly you're talking to clients on an everyday basis. Give us some considerations that they should be thinking about, whether it be network, cloud. I know storage is a sweetheart of yours, across the board.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways, a lot of different applications, the low-hanging fruit, the things that, that we are looking at in the new year for purpose-built type things. But I think, from a storage perspective, we talked a little bit about that earlier. There's a lot of options out there, and we don't really hardly ever start the conversation with, you got to have this storage array for this architecture, right? We kind of back into the storage or storage components of it. But when I look at the different use cases that are out there, there's SaaS applications that do things. We wrote some articles, and we'll probably get into that in future podcasts around coding assistants. That's a really easy thing for every large organization has a pretty good size, substantial size development environment. As Matt mentioned earlier, the application development is huge here at WWT. So that's a use case with coding assistants, can be something that you would build a purpose-built infrastructure around. So we're designing some things in bundles for that. What we've done in our team, and we hope that it's proving value, is we built some optional bundles, like small, medium, and large, and this is for tuning, fine-tuning, inference, and I'm speaking very generative AI terms. We can talk about this in applied AI. We can talk about it in computer vision. We've got digital twin. So we can go into a lot of this stuff, but it's really about, again, looking at that application and what the client is going to be doing with the architecture. I would say the team's done a nice job working with Matt. We've written some blogs recently on Ethernet versus InfiniBand, so on the networking stack. One came out today or just on Monday, about ECMP, packet spraying, and flowlets, and all the things that consider, this is not your mom and pop's network. This isn't traditional data center networking. That's one of the reasons why we built a high-performance architecture team, is because these things are needing additional love and care and feeding and expertise. And if you don't do things the right way, down to the cabling and optics, we've seen it where these things weigh a ton, just down to the physical infrastructure. You can miss out, and don't think the OEMs have all the answers. We've often uncovered times where we are 1,000 cables short for this deployment. I'm talking massive deployment. So you can think that can cause a major problem when you're doing deployment. So, we just, we'll like to make sure that we're using the experiences that we have to really kind of think through the next generation of what is to come. We're doing a bunch of testing right now on the storage side. I'm excited for some of that research to come out. We've done a lot of that in the past. I've done benchmarking. Maybe it dates me, but I was excited when we had 1 gig fiber channel and 2 gig fiber channel, and now Matt just said 800 gig. These are the switches we've got in the lab. I'm like, every port is, or multiple ports, 400 gig. I mean, it's just unreal, where we've gone over the last 2 decades. And it's super exciting. getting these accelerators, east-west traffic, talking to each other, understanding the north and south. When I say north and south, that's the communication from the accelerator down into the storage and beyond. It's just really I've learned so much just in the last year and a half on the entire stack that I'm thankful we've got a great team of resources to kind of go in and help consult on HPA.
And are those decisions that have to be made in a checklist order, or they have to be made all at the same time? Do they all have consequences against each other? How does that decision-making process happen?
I mean, it's good that when the left hand knows what the right hand's doing. Yes. So but oftentimes, no, they don't have to be all made at once, right? Again, we don't go in and we don't want to rip out an entire estate. If you've got something that's working well and your staff, you don't have to retrain your whole staff. If you've got a bunch of folks that have been doing InfiniBand work for the last 20 years, then man, InfiniBand is the right thing to do. Don't reinvent the wheel. Most folks know a little bit about Ethernet, so we're seeing Ethernet as a kind of a first-class citizen in this estate now. With Matt, just mentioned some of these switches up to 800 gig now, and more coming. I mean, obviously the faster, double that in short time. So yeah, I think those are the things that you need to consider, and I don't know, Matt. Any thoughts on your end?
No, I mean, it's just my number one concern when I talk to customers is be dynamic and be informed. Because if you're not informed, you could be making decisions in the wrong direction. So we want our customers to make the most informed solution. And you heard Jeff say they got to be able to scale north, south, east, west. Well, I think they also need to scale northeast, southwest, southeast, northwest, right? So they got to be able to scale in all directions because that's where this thing's headed. And innovations happening behind the scenes that we thought were going to take off and now are taking off, and that are adding to it. So you heard him talking around composable, right? And we've been looking at composable infrastructure, but there's going to be a whole nother level of composition that's going to happen, and we're offloading components off of the servers. We're introducing the world of data processing units and infrastructure processing units. And that's not just in the world of high performance architecture and AI, but it's also into the security realm. We have probably half a dozen POCs right now leveraging a data processing unit as an endpoint device and doing offloads to make the compute components, as you heard Jeff talk around it, even more efficient. So how are they accelerating the accelerators to do more? We're still going down the path of memory still big. So whether it's high bandwidth memory or whether it's DDR memory, and how do we make sure that we have the proper memory next to the proper processor that's happening? So whether it's a processor on a GPU or it's a standard CPU that we're accustomed to working with in all of our compute nodes, there's advances that's happening in the industry today that's adding to that. And it's just how we help the customer understand that this technology world that we live in is advancing at warp speed. And you can make a decision that could drastically affect your ability to be successful 6, 8, 12 months from now if you're not careful, if you're not informed with it. So make sure you check with us around the latest technologies that are available today. Let Jeff's team have a conversation with you around and work with our AI Proving Ground team. What has worked? What hasn't worked, right? When are you trying to push a string versus this is an easy integration? We definitely bless that configuration and go forward. And if you have questions, it's better to figure out before you start purchasing gear and trying to stick it together. So we can help with that giving it a try, giving it a look, validating what you're wanting to do is something good. And that's where I think our teams play well with working with the customer. What idea do you have? Have we done this before? Let us go show you what that looks like if you want to go down that path.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, you're hitting on a lot of the AI proving ground aspects, and we haven't touched on that necessarily yet. Give us an idea, maybe a brief elevator pitch on what the AI Proving Ground is.
So what we've done, we've worked with the great group of partners Worldwide has. We've brought in the turnkey solution you heard Jeff talk around. We brought in the reference architectures that we've talked about. We give customers the ability to mix and match different OEMs in different areas to see if their idea around their reference architecture works, both from a software, hardware, accelerator, storage, networking standpoint. So today, 15 plus labs, some Some of them are very static based upon turnkey solutions. We can't break those apart. We leave those alone. We make sure the customer understands that. Now, if there are options in those turnkey solutions, then we allow them to understand what those options are, and we allow them to do those testings. If there are software components that play into it and there are software options, we make sure they understand that. We make sure there are some out there that started building their own Kubernetes distribution, and when they want to get in the AI world, what they didn't have was something called a GPU operator. And we're like, I understand that this is what you wanted to do, but your Kubernetes version won't support your AI initiative, so you're going to have to do something different. And it's our ability to allow a customer to almost look at a menu of options and then quickly put that together inside of our AI proving ground with them to do the validation. Is this easy? Or is it, am I trying to do something really difficult? And should I maybe take a look at how conventionally I might have done something and maybe change my approach to this so that I can be successful in my AI initiatives going forward? And maybe this is I got a statement that says, don't do tomorrow what you did today just because you did it yesterday. Right? You always need to take a fresh look at things because things change on a daily basis, and make sure what you're doing is the right thing. And this is where Worldwide can help you understand, with the knowledge that we have, with the relationships that Jeff's team and our team have with our different partners, understanding what's coming out and how quickly it's coming out, and then helping them understand where we've done validation testing already on our own or with other customers that might play in their same vertical. We've seen how different industries have some very similar patterns. Now, we can't share exactly what the other ones are doing, but we'll have an idea in which we can get them pointed in the right direction at times if they get turned around.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Matt, because early adoption stuff is something we've always done in our ATC, our Advanced Technology Center. Well, think about how invaluable that can be in the world of high performance architecture, and we really didn't dig into like what we coined that is, but there's 4 pillars, right? And then we've talked a lot about all of that today, like compute, network, storage, but we didn't hit on a lot of the workflow stuff. But the workflow is the piece that brings these architectures to the actual folks that are going to consume it, right? So it's the data science and the folks that are going to use these things. So it's an MLOps platform, it's the workflow, it's the OpenShift, like the containers, the things that bring these things together, and the workflow, like really. Just
then you add the security frameworks around it and everything else that goes with it. It's complex.
Yeah, and you move one, and I like to call them nerd knobs. You can call them whatever you want, but you move one nerd knob, it can affect a ripple effect downstream, and it may not work. Like
Butterfly
we see that all the time.
Yeah,
we see that all the time, and that's why we do these things. That's why we early adopt. That's why we're aligned with so many of these OEMs. I think literally today, talking with an OEM about a new product that's going to release later this year, they want us to kick the tires on it. So think about, okay, if we can be an advisor to a client like that, there's a lot of value in that, right? So, there's so many things that we're uncovering as part of the proving ground. It's inherently why we built the ATC, but I love the fact that we've made the investment from an AI specific perspective in this proving ground, just because this is probably one of the most complex workloads we're going to ever see, and we'll continue to get more advanced.
And Brian, to add to that, it's not just our clients that are coming to us, it's our partners that are asking us to help them design their next reference architecture, right? We have a number of our organizations, hey, we have this idea, we have this trend, can you guys put it through its paces? Can you tell us where we've missed the mark on certain things? Can you help us develop this to the next level? So I take probably 4 or 5 calls a week from other partners that want us to validate different either integrations with another partner or integration with a new partner that they've created a relationship with, because there's a gap in their portfolio, in their AI portfolio, that they need to fill, and they had to have somebody validate it before they start going to market with the technology. So we're constantly even working with our own partners to help validate the technology that they're bringing to the market.
Yeah. Well, knowing it takes a team of teams to operate, develop, maintain the AI proving ground, and you're certainly amongst those kind of leading that charge. I wonder, Jeff, put your kind of client hat on here. What types of questions would you ask Matt just about the future of the AI proving ground, or where you might see it going?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to put that persona on because Matt and I have worked together so long. But like Matt, you and I both have our own opinions, very strong ones at times, on how things are going. But yeah, what do you see? What do you see in the next 3 months, 6 months? There's a lot of conferences coming, a lot of great things coming. You mentioned 800 gig. You mentioned a lot of stuff. But what do you think? like 2025, what do you think the next evolution
Yep.
is?
For us on our AI Proving Ground, I think what we're going to do is we're going to probably pick a number of the reference architectures or turnkey solutions that we know that are most popular in the market today. But as you heard Jeff talking about, start focusing a little bit more on the workflows themselves and the security components around them as well. So it's not going to be as much about, look, I got another environment, so that we hit 22 environments. But if we can't take those environments and showcase them in a working fashion, that then pattern what a customer wants to do, then why are we doing that, right? So I think what you're going to see out of our AI Proving Ground is we're going to, again, to me, I believe we're probably already ahead of anybody. I don't know of anybody in the industry that has the capabilities that we have today and the scalability, and we're not stopping. The initiative and the backing we're getting from our executive team is amazing. And over 20 years here at Worldwide, it's awesome to see the backing we get from our executive team. But we're doing it in an intelligent fashion. So we're sitting down as a group, right? This is a relay race, and we have a number of different teams involved that will require their special skill sets to make sure we're doing the right things in all areas. So we're making sure we're doing things in an open way in which we're asking Jeff's team for some input. We're asking our data scientists for some input. We're asking our application development team for input. And then we're working with, even getting our facilities team, hey, how are we going to handle this situation and moving forward? And we're bringing all those people together. And that's the same thing we can do with our customers. So look for us to continue scaling out what we're doing from an AI Proving Ground, but look for us to get a little more detailed in what we're doing as well. So we're gonna not just have it's not about the quantity, it's gonna be about the quality of technology solutions we're gonna bring out in 2025.
Yeah, and just to pile on there, and Matt, I know you know this, but like I talked about it early on, like the ROI at the line of business. I think, to me, marrying that to the architecture and infrastructure is where you're going to see a big emphasis this year, and maybe that comes in the form of, additional, like, let's show you a demo of something real, like an application we've built that actually can do something that is relevant for a healthcare or a life sciences team or a manufacturing team or retail or, like name a vertical. And we're really going to have some of these use cases and demo type environments that are very impactful to things that we are working on solving these problems at our client level. I think, to me, that's the evolution of everything. I love the baton thing, the relay race. These are things like we can't do this alone. It's something that it takes so many different personas. I mentioned the Venn diagram. It does in a client environment as well. And living and breathing it every day, I think, is one thing that is allowing us to help navigate these conversations and tying the I think simplifying the complex is something we've always done. This one it's pretty big and a little bit more challenging to do, but we're working through it, and those use cases are going to really be important in the new year.
Yeah, well, knowing that things are only going to advance even more rapidly. We have agentic frameworks coming out. AGI is potentially on the horizon. Quantum, whatever you want to say. Jeff, is your team going to turn into, from the high performance architecture to the super high performance architecture? Like, what's coming down the line
right
from
now,
HPA?
we got one of our guys working on a quantum simulator at the moment. So, like, I don't know if we're going to solve world hunger tomorrow, but I would tell you that yes, we have folks that are looking 2 years out and 5 years out, and oftentimes we have to temper that with what's on the truck today too. I mean, of course, we want to be able to solve problems with the solutions that are out there today, but yeah, absolutely. It's a year ago, if you would have talked to me about retrieval augmented generation, we would be still trying to figure out all the things that comes with it. Now we got to agentic. You mentioned like AGI and quantum. Like, these are things that we need to figure out. I was just at a supercompute last fall in November, and I mean, just the things that are coming out. From a high-performance computing perspective, and quantum. Matt mentioned graph earlier, where instead of maybe vector databases, using graph for some of the new use cases. Not that graph is new, but there's just so many things from a research perspective that we have to keep doing, and we didn't really talk about that much. But nope. I would say most of like a lot of our data science research happens in our proving ground. Right? They've got their own area and environment where they're testing models and doing a lot of all this agentic testing. And it's going to continue to advance. So I think, we're looking at 30, 60, 90, a year out, and then we've got architects that are really going out there thinking, what are we going to be doing 5 years down the road? What does that look like?
Yeah. Give me your kind of craziest, paint the picture of what's out there in the next, long-term horizon, both of you.
We've been thinking about this, we've been dreaming about it. You heard me talk around. You heard the word composable, right? We talked around mainframe, right? We talked around accelerators and CPUs and memory and high-speed networking, and how quickly that's changing. So there's technology coming out in which, like I said, we're taking the cabinet and we're turning the cabinet into the blade chassis, we'll call it. And there's a backplane for power and cooling going into it. But you may start seeing a backplane from a PCI standpoint, or there's going to be components built in to bring that together. And who knows, in 18 months from now, 24 months from now, we might be building technology solutions where you're sliding in trays of CPU and memory, you're sliding in trays of drives, you're sliding in trays of network interface cards and DPUs, and you're scaling each independent component with sliding another blade system in, but all interconnected together, all with software. And then you're connecting those different cabinets together with high-speed networking. So whether that's utilizing Ultra Ethernet type technology, or even back into the conventional IB technology at certain levels with InfiniBand, who knows? But it's coming, right? The way in which we architect, because we have to be, I don't know, more dynamic and intelligent about it, because if not, then we're going to run out of power on the planet. We can see that there's organizations out there from a cloud standpoint that are turning nuclear reactors back on because they don't have power to support it. And this is where we have to be more dynamic and purposeful in what we're building and how we're scaling it, and allowing the organization to not have to go buy another server if a new accelerator comes out, because that's kind of how it goes right now. But if you build a more dynamic composable environment, they can eventually begin to add in different components and adopt the newer components at a more return on investment. You hit that on a couple of times. A more efficient and a way that adds a little more return on investment as they're scaling it into it because of how they're deploying it and bringing it in their infrastructure. So to me, that's my crystal ball that if I could say it's going to happen in the next few years. I think the technologies we start to see in the industry that's starting to mature could lead to infrastructure built like that.
Yeah, Jeff, crystal ball. I mean, I'm always interested in the quantum part, but you said you got guys looking 5 years out.
Yeah, I mean that'd be the quantum stuff, right? So like to Matt's point, I mean, there's going to be all kinds of new stuff with the infrastructure play. I would say quantum is something that we know is there's a lot of research going on. There's big, massive simulation things happening at some of the biggest research institutes in the world, and we're actually aligned with some of them. So it's that would be a big one. Like the industry powerhouses. I don't need to name names, but we all know who they are. I mean, they're talking about everyone's going to have their own personal assistant. And a lot of that stuff's starting to happen today. Like for meeting coalition and collaboration and transcribing and taking notes for you. But like I think even further, I mean, just like the announcement this week around some of the models that can be placed on the new chips that have been released, I think you're just going to see that continue to compound. It's hard enough right now to keep up with what's on the truck today. For me, the crystal ball stuff, like I like to focus where like the customers are going to have the most interest today, but we need to always keep our eye on what's next, and quantum is one of those things that our team is looking at. So.
Yeah. Awesome stuff from Jeff and Matt, who graciously took time out of their busy schedules to join us today. A few key lessons learned from our conversation as you go off and try to scale AI strategies within your organization. First, flexibility and scalability are deal breakers. Adaptable architectures that can scale in multiple directions to accommodate growing AI workloads and evolving requirements will help you expand your AI initiatives. 2, think holistically when it comes to AI implementation. Jeff and Matt cautioned against a narrow, siloed approach to AI. They stressed the need for a comprehensive center of excellence that aligns people, processes, and technology across your organization. And finally, leverage practical experience in testing. AI is incredible, but don't underestimate the value of hands-on experience and rigorous testing when designing purpose-built AI infrastructure. In the end, the need for flexible architectures, a holistic AI strategy, and grounding decisions in practical experience and testing will help all successfully scale and operationalize your AI capabilities, both in the near and long term. If you're looking for an even deeper dive on any of these themes, we have a ton of resources and research available on WWT.com that provide practical, actionable ways forward. If you like this episode of the AI Proving Ground podcast, please consider subscribing, leaving a review, or rating us. And sharing with friends and colleagues is always appreciated. This episode of the AI Proving Ground podcast was co-produced by Naz Baker, Stephanie Hammond, and Mallory Shaffrin. Additional research contributed by Mike Trajecki, John Duran, Bill Stanley, and Mike Parham, among others. Our audio and video engineer is John Knobloch. My name is Brian Felt. See you next time.